They thought she was just an ordinary woman, gray hoodie, worn-out shoes, not a match for their glamorous world. But just a few minutes later, that entire store would have to bow to the truth. She was the one in the highest position of power. "I'm so glad you're here. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you believe that kindness, timely silence, and integrity can transform an entire system, then subscribe to this channel today. Because tomorrow's story will surprise you even more." That late afternoon, a light spring rain fell gently on the stone-paved sidewalk of La Rochelle Plaza, where high-end fashion boutiques lined up like fortresses of the elite. Inside the Maison Leo store, soft jazz mingled with the clinking of crystal glasses, customers gliding gracefully in designer dresses and expensive perfumes like a perfectly staged performance. Until she walked in. A gray hoodie, straight-leg jeans, hair neatly tied back, everything far too ordinary for a space like this. But Clara Whitman, 42, showed no sign of concern. She stepped slowly through the entrance, her slightly discolored white sneakers making a soft sound on the polished wooden floor. Behind the counter, Monique Del Rey, the store manager, immediately looked up. A platinum blonde woman with dark red lipstick and 3.5-inch heels, she looked as though she'd been cut from the pages of a fashion magazine. Her eyes swept over Clara from the slightly wrinkled shirt to the canvas crossbody bag on her shoulder. It took her half a second to decide, not Maison Leo material. "Excuse me," Monique said, her voice loud enough to rise above the background music, "but our store does not carry discounted items or samples." Clara paused in front of the dress rack. An ivory gown hung from a wooden hanger, French silk, hand-embroidered, simple but striking. She had only just brushed her fingers against the hem when Monique approached, her tone colder now. "I would ask you not to damage the display. That dress cost nearly $7,000. Several customers turned to look. A young woman carrying a Chanel bag let out a soft laugh. The man next to her whispered, "Wrong store." A young sales associate behind the counter darted a glance at the manager, then quickly lowered her head as if afraid of getting involved. Clara still said nothing. She simply looked at Monique, not with pleading, nor with anger, just a silence. That was unsettling. Monique grew more irritated. She stepped closer, raising her hand to brush the dress from Clara's fingers. "I'll call security if you keep touching items you don't intend to buy." Clara slowly withdrew her hand. She turned her head, her eyes sweeping the store. Crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, $8,000 wool coats, and all the cold eyes waiting for her to leave. A security guard, tall radio on his shoulder, stepped in from a side door. Monique immediately signaled, "This woman is disturbing our customers. Please escort her out." Clara didn't resist. But as the guard approached, she quietly said, just loud enough to be heard, "I'll leave, but not because I've been told to." Monique folded her arms, sneering, "Smart move. People like you should know their place." Clara looked at her, then pulled from her hoodie pocket a black card, smooth, without logo, without a name. She didn't raise it high. She simply held it in her hand in front of Monique. All sound seemed to stop. A staff member murmured under her breath, "Is that a centurion?" Monique laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "Fake cards like that are everywhere on eBay." Clara said nothing more. She slipped the card back, zipped up her hoodie pocket. Her eyes at last settled on one person, the young girl behind the counter, Sophie, according to the name tag on her chest. Their gazes met for a single second. No words, but something had awakened. Clara turned and walked straight out the door. Monique tossed her chin, and "Don't come back." Outside, the rain still fell lightly. Clara paused beside the store's large window, looking back at the silk dress hanging under golden light. Reflected beside it was her own image, simple, quiet, out of place in every way. And yet, her eyes were steady, unyielding, unashamed, just waiting for something or someone, and the real story was only just beginning. The next morning, Maison Leo opened as usual. Monique walked in with a latte in hand and her Chanel sunglasses still on, even though there was no sunlight inside the store. She glanced around like a queen entering her castle. Anything new, she called toward the cashier's counter. Sophie, the young employee, simply shook her head and continued rearranging the gift boxes. Monique gave her a less than friendly look. Last night she had kept thinking about that woman in the gray hoodie, Clara. Even after having thrown her out, something about her made Monique feel uneasy, like a faint scratch on a mirror, small but impossible to ignore. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. A courier stepped in holding a package wrapped in silver cellophane and tied with a neat ribbon. "Delivery for manager Monique Del Rey," he said. Monique frowned. "I didn't order anything. This is a return shipment from the system, sent back from the executive office of Johnson Holdings," he added, signing the confirmation and walking out. Johnson Holdings. Monique opened the package. Inside was a wine-red, genuine leather handbag, a limited edition piece from last fall's collection valued at over $9,000. The tag was still on, completely unused. She flipped to the inside pocket and found a small folded note, handwritten. Every item carries the soul of a brand, and that soul isn't defined by its price, but by the way it is given. C.W. Monique froze. C.W. At that moment, Sophie slowly walked over, hesitating. "Do you think it was the woman from yesterday who sent it?" Monique frowned, then shook her head. "Just a cheap stunt. Buy it, return it all, just for attention." But she knew very well this limited edition bag had never been sold publicly. Only invited customers were allowed to purchase, and the initials C.W. on the note. She couldn't help but think of a name she'd seen before in internal reports. Clara Whitman, a silent investor in the boutique chain, someone no one had ever met in person. The incident seemed to have ended until that afternoon when the store's security footage was leaked online. A short clip capturing the moment, Monique lightly slapped Clara's hand as she reached for the dress. No one knew who released it, but the speed at which it spread was uncontrollable. An anonymous account posted it with the caption, "Is this how Maison Leo welcomes customers?" Internet users quickly shared it. Many expressed outrage. Comments poured in like a flood. Who gave her the right to judge someone by their hoodie? That black card wasn't fake. I've seen that exact one among the elite. Who is this woman? Why does her gaze make me want to apologize on behalf of everyone? At the Johnson Holdings office, a senior assistant quietly filed the video into the client records. The name Clara Whitman was marked in red, operates undercover, granted authority to audit retail systems. Identity confidential. In the store, Monique began to realize the tide had turned. Some VIP clients canceled their appointments. Complaint calls began coming in from other branches. "Is it true you kicked a customer out of the flagship store? Customers are demanding a video explanation. The press is asking questions. Do you have anything to say?" Monique could only repeat, "I didn't know who she was." And that was exactly the problem. On Friday afternoon, golden sunlight poured through the glass panels of Maison Leo, casting shimmering threads onto the wooden floor. But inside the store, no one felt at ease. From the cosmetics counter to the logistics team, everyone knew something was about to come crashing down. Since morning, Monique had received 3 calls from the regional executive board. Each one was veiled with implications requesting her to provide a full account of the incident involving the customer from the other day. But when Monique asked directly, "Who is she?" no one answered. She began to doubt, not doubting who Clara was, but whether she had made a mistake. At exactly 4:10 p.m., the automatic doors opened. Clara walked in. Still the same gray hoodie as before, still the same old sneakers, still that composed demeanor. The atmosphere in the store stretched tight. A male employee unconsciously stopped advising a customer. Sophie, folding towels, froze in place. Only Monique tried to maintain her composure, but her hands clutched the glass of water on the counter. "You've come back," Monique said, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. Clara didn't reply. She walked straight to the last row of dresses where the new season's collection was displayed. She stopped before a midnight blue silk dress, high collar, long sleeves, simple yet stunningly elegant. She gently touched the hem. This time no one stopped her. A few customers began to whisper. One woman murmured to her friend, "Is that the woman from the video?" Monique stepped forward, her voice no longer confident. "If you're thinking of purchasing, I'll assign someone to assist you." Clara looked at her, half smiling. "Thank you. I'm just browsing." At that moment, a man in a black suit walked in. Tall, refined, with neatly combed salt and pepper hair and eyes sharp enough to read the entire room. On his lapel was a small pin, Johnson Holdings, Executive Division. Monique turned pale. You are... "My name is Ethan Moore, in charge of internal audits by request of the founding shareholder," he said crisply. All eyes turned to Clara. Sophie's jaw dropped. A female customer blurted out, "Founding shareholder? You mean her?" Clara neither confirmed nor denied. She simply stood there, still gently running her fingers along the high-grade silk. A simple gesture, yet now carried the weight of someone appraising the very soul of the brand. Ethan turned to Monique. "We need to review the complaint records, and also your response to last week's incident." I didn't know who she was. Honestly, anyone dressed like that who walks in here doesn't deserve to be served. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, but that's exactly why this audit is happening." Sophie, watching from afar, swallowed hard. At last, she stepped forward, quietly. "That day, I didn't do anything. I knew I should have spoken up, but I was scared." Clara looked at her for the first time that day. She truly smiled. "No one expects you to shout. Just know that next time you won't stay silent," Clara said. The room fell into silence, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was transformative. Clara turned to Monique. "I'm not here for revenge. I came to see the place I once trusted, where I invested with my heart, how it treats its customers now." Monique was speechless, her face now pale as paper, drained of all color. "I didn't mean any harm. Sometimes harm doesn't come from words, but from a look." Clara cut her off, her voice calm yet sharp, like a silent blade. Ethan nodded. "I'll be forwarding this full report to the leadership board, and possibly initiating a personnel restructuring." Clara nodded. She turned back to the dress, gently removed it from the hanger, and folded it. "This one I'll buy. For another woman, one who's never dared step into this store because she thought she wasn't good enough." She reached into her pocket and took out the black card. This time the cashier received it with both hands. 3 hours after Clara left Maison Leo, with the carefully wrapped dress in a premium paper bag, social media exploded. An anonymous account believed to belong to an employee within Johnson Holdings posted a screenshot from internal security footage. In the image, Clara is seen speaking with Ethan Moore. Behind her, the Maison Leo sign glows brightly, and the caption on the photo simply reads, "The woman they kicked out of the flagship store is the very one who funded its opening." Within less than an hour, the image was shared over 80,000 times. Previous posts about the incident were suddenly pieced together, analyzed, and dissected in detail. People began asking, "Who is Clara Whitman?" And then the truth slowly came to light. On the official website of Johnson Holdings, a new information page was published, introducing our strategic investors. At the top of the list, Clara Whitman's name appeared alongside a brief bio: former brand architect, luxury retail chain advisor who had helped revive 3 fashion houses on the brink of collapse, and most importantly, founding investor of Maison Leo, shareholder with veto power over brand strategy in the North American market. Online hashtags like Clara Whitman, Maison Leo scandal, and power in silence began trending. Comments poured in such as, "Unbelievable. They humiliated the very woman who built the store. She could have screamed, could have sued, but she chose silence. And that silence made the whole world listen. This isn't just about fashion. This is about the right to exist with dignity. At Johnson Holdings headquarters in the glass-paneled boardroom on the 18th floor, regional directors sat in silence. Each of them was watching the viral video replaying on the large screen. The moment Monique brushed Clara's hand away, the chilling line, "I'll call security," and Clara's eerily calm gaze as she pulled out the black card from her hoodie pocket. CEO Laurent Mayer sat at the head of the table, expressionless, tapping lightly on a personnel review folder, the evaluation report of all Maison Leo staff in the Eastern region. "I stayed silent for 3 days to see what would reveal itself," he said steadily. "And now I have only one question. If that woman weren't a shareholder, would we have investigated at all?" No one answered. Laurent nodded slightly. "Then the problem isn't her role, but the way we judged a gray hoodie." He signed the suspension order for Monique Del Rey and the entire management team of the La Rochelle Plaza store pending further investigation. That evening at a television studio, the show Inside Power unexpectedly announced the guest of honor for their special episode on discrimination in retail would be Clara Whitman. But at the last minute, Clara declined the invitation. Instead, she wrote a public letter shared on her personal page. "I don't need a seat on television to say that kindness shouldn't depend on credit cards or designer labels. I wasn't hurt by the insult itself, but by how normalized that insult had become. I will still wear hoodies. I will still wear old shoes, not to test anyone or expose the system, but to remind those who are watching sometimes the woman you laugh at is the one holding the key to the room you're standing in." At Maison Leo the next day, a notice was posted on the front glass door. "The store will be temporarily closed for 72 hours for a comprehensive review of procedures and service culture." Sophie, now appointed by Ethan to serve as interim manager personally, wrote the small note in the corner of the announcement, "Closed, not because we failed, but because we opened the wrong door in our hearts." 3 days later, Maison Leo at La Rochelle Plaza reopened. There were no reporters, no red carpet, no celebratory hot air balloons like the grand relaunches of the past. Just a small sign posted inside the glass door. "We reopen not because we are good enough, but because we are ready to begin again the right way." The interior of the store was still as elegant as before, but the atmosphere was entirely different. Lighter, calmer, and gone was the constant feeling of being watched that past customers had often complained about. Sophie, now serving as interim manager, stood behind the cashier's counter wearing a pale beige blazer, simple but respectful. She was instructing a new staff member on how to greet customers with a smile that was genuine, not trained. The door opened again. Clara walked in, but this time there was no hoodie. She wore a cream-colored knit sweater, high-waisted slacks, her hair loosely tied up and her face bare of makeup. Still simple, still Clara, but a Clara of today, known, respected, and still entirely herself. Sophie immediately stepped forward, slightly nervous. You came back." Clara smiled. "I promised I would. Would you like to see the new collection I can show you?" "No need. I didn't come to buy anything today." Sophie looked a bit surprised. Clara walked over to a small display shelf near the window, the very spot where the silk dress she hadn't been allowed to touch had once hung. Now there stood a black and white photograph. The photo showed a younger Clara in a simple shirt, still carrying boxes, beaming brightly in the first warehouse of Maison Leo 10 years ago. Below the photo was a gold-embossed line. "Style begins with how you treat people." Clara stood there for quite a while. No one disturbed her. No one tried to make conversation. Everyone seemed to understand some moments are not meant to be interrupted. She turned back to Sophie. "I've been to many places, designed many spaces, but what I've learned is this: if employees are not respected, they will never truly care for the customers. And if customers are judged based on a glance, then all the luxury in the world becomes meaningless." Sophie nodded, her eyes slightly red. You taught me that. Not through words, but through your silence that day. Clara smiled gently. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Silence is simply the space where others can hear themselves more clearly. Then she took a small black box from her coat pocket and placed it on the counter. I'm not taking any official role in the system, but I want to leave this behind. Sophie opened the box. Inside was a silver lapel pin shaped like a slightly open door with a tiny inscription below, "Always leave a door open." Clara said, each month give this to a staff member who made someone feel welcome. They don't have to sell the most. They just need to know how to listen. Sophie gripped the box tightly. I'll do as you say. We are grateful to you. Clara gave a slight nod. She turned to leave, her low-heeled shoes quiet on the wooden floor. At the door, she paused, looking out at the street. A light spring breeze rustled the trees outside. An elderly woman approached the door but seemed hesitant. Clara pushed the door open, held it, and smiled. The door's open now, ma'am. Please come in. The woman smiled bashfully and stepped inside. Clara walked away, hands still in her coat pockets. No one ran after her for a photo. No one asked for her autograph. But everyone knew today was no longer like yesterday. So the story of Clara Whitman comes to a close, a journey that needed no shouting, no public titles, just calm resolve and quiet determination to transform an entire system. If this story made you reflect on how we see others, on kindness, in the smallest of moments, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video to spread more stories where silence holds power and true style begins in the heart. And right now on screen, I'm leaving 2 of our most loved videos. You won't want to miss them.